Welcome back.
Behind the curtain.
Mysteries of the past.
Yeah, present. Yes, we are present today.
Yep, I'm Ryan. This is Josh. In case you're new, we like talking about the Bible, doing Bible study, and we like talking about weird things that Christians don't like talking about, like aliens and giants. And I don't know. I mean, some Christians like giants. They like at least one giant, right? That's Goliath.
Yeah, they can talk about Goliath. He's okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
some of the other ones are off limits, I guess.
But in case you're new to the podcast, we've been going through the book of Genesis. We wanted to cover the fall of man and kind of explain why the world is in the state that it's in. You ever wondered that? You know, like I know in apologetics, but it's a common question. Why is the world in the condition that it's in right now? Why?
Yep.
Why are we dealing with this? We've been answering that.
When I get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and I stub my toe, why?
Yeah, why God?
When I step on the Lego, why God?
I think of Michael Scott when Toby came back to work. No, God. Yeah, but so we've gone through Genesis we went 1 through 6, verse 8. We didn't do the entire chapter 6.
We took a long break after 6, didn't we?
We did. We started talking about dinosaurs. We talked about Mount Hermon. We talked about the book of Enoch.
Yeah, we went a little topical there for a bit.
We had a couple guests on the show. So far, we've had Jed Payne and Laura Sanger.
Bro, Dr. Sanger and Jed is great.
I'm still processing that Dr. Sanger episode. Today, what's on the agenda? She mentioned Babylon and Nimrod and globalism. And so we kind of were like, hey, we need to get back on track with our little trek through Genesis. And so we got all the way to Genesis 6:8, because that's where the Nephilim and the sons of God come in. That's the prelude to the flood. Yeah. And so we stopped there. And so we were like, let's jump back in. And so today we are going to try to cover, now buckle up everybody. Yeah. We are going to try to cover Genesis 6, starting in verse 8 or 9, where Noah comes in, all the way to Genesis 11.
All the way to Revelation.
All the way to Revelation. Which is actually just repeating Genesis. No, I'm not going there right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we want to get to at least the Tower of Babel, which would be Genesis 11:8. Now, we're not going to stop and talk about the flood, because we can have a whole episode or two on its own about the flood. Like, let's see, I have a list here of common questions about the flood. Like, is the number of days? Maybe is the number of days symbolic? Yeah. And I'd love to have somebody, since we're having guests on the show now, I'm sure there's somebody that can explain that better than we can.
We need to find some sort of scientist guy or something.
Mm-hmm. But that's a good example. Like, is there geological and archaeological evidence for the flood? What's the symbolism of like the dove and the raven and the number of days and the size of the ark? Are those real numbers, or are they symbolic, or both? Because we like to say that, right? It can be both. Yeah. Was it global or regional? Now that's something that like I grew up always being told it was global. Yeah. And now as an adult, I realize there's a large number of Christians that think it was a regional flood. Yeah. Right.
Just in their
Christians and skeptics,
little hometown flood.
So, and I'm not going to lie, there's good arguments on both sides, but like those are all topics we can cover in depth in a different episode. Today we have to cover a lot of ground. And so, we're going to kind of do a survey of these 5 chapters.
So you're going to be the designated driver, and I'm going to hang out the window and holler at the speed bumps with little points that I have. That I put in the notes. When I say speed bumps, they might not flow with the rest of what we're talking about, but I'll try to keep it honed in there. Yeah. But fun little nuggets.
Dude, I've never had so many tabs open on my computer at once, and I'm reading my outline off my phone so that I can have all my tabs open.
Yeah, this is what I'm working with right here.
Yeah, ditto. I lost my little stand, so.
Yeah, I got a little stand for my phone, and that's about all I have.
This is the 4th location change in a row for me. I'm back in like our original spot.
Well, the background was a little better this time.
Yeah. It's a nicer background, but that's because I didn't decorate it. So I'm still like a nomad. I'm still trying to find a place that I like to record.
Yeah. Oh, so people listening, if you haven't seen or heard yet, we have a YouTube channel, which we're slowly working on, slowly building up, adding videos here and there. So we're starting to discuss the things that pertain to video now. So if you hear that, that's what it is. Go check us out on YouTube. I can't tell you how to get there. Just search for it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll find it.
Yep. We have so far most of our episodes are on there. A lot of them are just audio, but when we interviewed Dr. Sanger, we recorded that video, and we're trying to do videos now. So shout out to Riverside. We have been using the Riverside Film app, and it works pretty good. I like it.
Pretty good. Yep.
Makes it easy for people like us that don't want to spend a lot of time editing. So if any of you out there are interested, there's a shout out to Riverside. They're not paying me for that yet. ... So yeah, man. So we're going to cover a lot of ground very quickly. Flood joke, cover a lot of ground very quickly. Genesis 6 through 11. So you guys buckle up. The reason we're trying to cover so much material today too, by the way, is because we have more guests coming on the show.
Yes, we do.
We've really enjoyed the interviews that we've done so far, so we want to keep it up. And so we're going to try to have a guest on every couple episodes. But they're going to talk about some of these stories in more depth, and we want to lay the groundwork for that.
Yeah.
So we're not going to dive real deep into any particular topic, but we are going to raise a few points that when you read Genesis, you should pay attention to these. Remember when we started the podcast, Josh, and we talked about how don't just check off your daily reading plan and glaze over the scriptures that you're so familiar with. Like, you should be asking questions as you go through it, And as we learn about the historical context, more and more about the context of these passages, it's easy to spot some of these questions. And so we have several of them outlined that we're going to go through today. But yeah, man, I'm excited.
I'm ready. Let's drink from the fire hydrant of the Bible.
Fire hydrant engaged. All right, man. Well, let's start with Genesis 6. So here's the deal. We just said we're going to skip the flood, right? Because we don't have time for it. That's actually going to get us past most of 6, 7, and 8. So we're already 3 chapters ahead.
Jumping right into 9. Look how fast we went through those.
But we do need to talk about Noah and his family for just a second, because they're pretty important. And so they get introduced in Genesis 6. And so the Bible says that, the Lord was, he regretted making man. A lot of people, that could be our first question right there. I didn't even write that one down, but a lot of people criticize God's action in the flood, that he's this megalomaniac and he's, trying to kill everybody. And he why would he make something that he would regret later? And it's important to note that, like, the use of the word regret there it says that it grieved him to his heart. Yeah. It shows that this is an event that impacted him. It doesn't mean that he made a mistake.
Right.
So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I know that sounds like kind of a cop-out answer, but that's just not the context of this. The Lord is still grieved when people live in darkness and perish, right? Yeah. Because we're his creation, okay? And so so that he realizes that creation has become so corrupt because of these other players that we've discussed, the sons of God, the Nephilim, humans interacting with these beings that are trespassing on earth, essentially, and violating boundaries that the Lord established. And the spiritual beings are not, or I should say, the angelic beings, the sons of God, and the Nephilim, the hybrids, they're not the only ones that are guilty. The humans are guilty too. In fact, the reason God is flooding the earth is because he said the wickedness of man was great. Right. And so it's their lust for power and their lust for knowledge, and they have corrupted themselves. And so the Lord realizes it's at a point now where he has to step in and take action. And that's what he regrets.
Right. Well, I mean, the humanity, they knew who Yahweh was, but they chose to serve these other gods that descended, and we're going to serve them. And then, of course, they were. I think this whole like Genesis 6 thing is way worse than we think, I think.
Right.
It's there's so much going on. So, I mean, you have to get into the extra biblical text, but when you put all of that stuff together of this account, it's way worse than just, they worshiped another god. And like, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of mythical stuff, a lot of magical stuff and evil stuff, and
that's
human
the thing
sacrifice probably. And so
I think a lot of people in the modern Western religious thought, you don't realize the level of engagement they had with these beings.
Right.
Like you think about like as a Protestant, because like the churches I've gone to have been in that category. They're not Catholic. They're not Orthodox. Yeah. People in that group may criticize, Catholics, for instance, for praying to saints and doing Hail Marys and doing these rituals and stuff. But that all, what my point is not whether that's right or wrong. It's just that seems very innocent, and all you're doing is saying a prayer. You might have a figure or an icon of a person to bring that to mind when you pray. But that's not what was going on here. Right. These beings were walking among humans. Right. They were teaching them things. They were leading them in this corruption. They were trading goods and knowledge and sacrifices. Like there was sacrifice going on, all kinds of wickedness and debauchery. And so this was not like, oh, they had a statue of Buddha and they were rubbing it and whatever you think people are doing when they worship other gods. This was a very different world.
Yes, it was. Yep. That's what like Al Marino and some of those guys called it the golden age.
Right.
It was like watching the MCU, it's like all of these gods are on earth, and people are subjugated to them and worshiping them and sacrificing to them. And but then again, it's like, man, like, what would you do if a divine being came down, divine beings came down and started ruling over the earth and showed great power, and like, that might happen again.
That's a topic for later.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yep.
So along comes Noah, who the Lord says is righteous. He says, he says that, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, again, I'm not going to take a side on this today, but a lot of people want that word righteous to mean pure genetically, like Dr. Sanger talked about that.
Right.
That, I guess that's possible. But
it can be both.
Yeah, it could be both. Right. So the distinction here, though, is, especially as New Testament Christians, we understand faith, right? Salvation by faith. Okay. So Noah, I believe he's even mentioned in the New Testament about this, that he had faith in God when he built the ark and got on the ark, And so, so Noah was righteous. Noah walked with God and he was righteous. He was considered innocent of the wickedness that was going on.
Well, that phrase favor, it should bring to mind grace, unmerited favor. It's not that he did anything to receive favor. It seems like, although he could have been, a righteous man or whatever, but that's not how he gained God's favor. It's God just bestowed favor on him. He looked on him and said, I'm gonna be good to him. I'm gonna bless him.
Yeah. Yep. And
so same idea.
Then we get into the whole, all the animals coming on the ark.
Now, wait a minute. We need to back up
and all that stuff.
Here's the speed bump. Here's the first speed bump.
Okay. First thing.
So let's talk about the birth of Noah really quickly.
Oh, but Josh, that's not in the Bible.
Yeah, it's not. But it kind of was with the Bible. They were buddies.
Okay. So you're going to have to explain this for the audience for sure.
Right. Yeah. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was where we got a lot of the Bible from, a lot of scrolls and manuscripts and fragments of the Bibles that we do have. Most people know that like there was, I think there was a whole completed thing of the Book of Enoch, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but we know that fragments or scrolls of Enoch were with it. And Enoch, and I could talk about the Book of Noah, but I don't know a whole lot about that yet. I need to research it some more. But evidently, there was some fragments of the Book of Noah that were with the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. But the Book of Enoch talks about the birth of Noah, and it is wild. It is wild to say the least. So Noah is born, and he's the son of Lamech, and it describes like his appearance when he comes out, and Lamech freaks out because the description is pretty interesting and kind of strange. It says that the body of the baby was white as snow and as a red blooming rose, and the hair of his head and his long locks, that's interesting. He had like long locks of hair, were white like wool. So his skin and his hair were white. And it says that his eyes were like the ray of the sun. So that sounds poetic. So what that means, I'm not sure yet, but we can talk about it. When he opened his eyes, he lit up the whole house like the sun. So he probably had very bright eyes, it seems. The whole house was very full of light. And when he was taken from the midwife, he opened his mouth and praised the Lord, which is funny.
Jeez.
Dude, Lamech freaks out. It says his father Lamech was afraid of him, and he fled and ran to his father Methuselah. And he said to Methuselah, I've begotten a strange son. And this is where it gets interesting. He's like, I've got, my son is really weird. I need help. He said, he is not like a human being, but he resembles the children of the angels in heaven. And his nature is different. So he's not like us. His eyes are like the ray of the sun. His countenance is glorious. And he seems to me that he has not sprung from me, but from the angels. And so that is extremely interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And this is something that Alberino talks about, and maybe one day we'll be able to ask him, which would be great. He thinks that the angels in heaven, the sons of God, probably had this appearance like they're describing Noah had, because that's what Lamech says. He sees him and he goes, oh, crap, he looks like the sons of God. His skin is white. His hair is white. His eyes are bright like the sun, which we could talk about that. But it made me think of albinos and albinism. When you have no pigment in your skin, and sometimes there's no pigment in your eyes, it makes your eyes bright red or like a really bright pink. And so that appearance to probably a very dark brown-skinned people, and then they have a child that is stark white. And you can go online and look at some pictures of albinism, and it's wild. They look really cool.
So this would be like a really shocking thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's why he was so scared. I mean, it seems to me that this makes sense to me in my head when maybe he was albino or something. But then again, he could have had, he was chosen by God and favored. Maybe he had some sort of spiritual countenance around him or something, where it talks about in the New Testament that John the Baptist was filled with the Spirit in his mother's womb, and he leapt inside the womb, when he got close to Jesus. And so, maybe there was some sort of... Yeah, and then
the purely, I guess, the practical view would be that that's all literary device, that it's not necessarily true, but whoever wrote that was trying to highlight Noah.
Right.
But if that's the case, it's weird that, because I think after that, we talked about it before, and his dad goes and prays about it to make sure that he's not a hybrid.
Right. Yeah. Well, then Methuselah is like, well, we need to go talk to Enoch.
Yeah. That would have been Noah's grandfather.
Right. And so they're like, and it says, you can go read it yourself. It's in the Book of Enoch. It's toward the back end. But it says that they go to find Enoch, and it says they had to go to the ends of the earth because he dwelled with the angels.
Yeah, because Enoch is off doing his thing.
It's crazy, bro. It's so cool, though. But
let me mention, too, that brings up the topic we talked about before about did Enoch die? Remember, we talked about Enoch and Elijah, whether they died or not.
Did God just move
Enoch
him
was somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was somewhere doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
He had a different job. Yeah.
I think God could have friggin' teleported him to Eden.
Maybe so.
Well, no, it says that he was dwelling with the angels. It says in there.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
I think. Yeah, let me see.
But so then Enoch basically says, like, no, he's a human. He's your son. Don't worry about it.
Right. That's what leads me to believe that maybe he had the trace of albinism or whatever.
Yeah, maybe so. Interesting. So it would have been like an omen,
I think so. Well, yeah, it talks about, it goes on to talk about things that were going wrong in that environment. It said like the waters were flooding too much in there where they were living. It said that there was some other things I forgot. You have to go read it. But it says that when Noah was born, those things stopped. So it was like things that they saw that were bad. And it was like, ooh, this is not a good thing. Like it all ceased when Noah was born. And so they were like, oh, something special about this one, So maybe it's like a foreshadowing of like a messianic type and shadow. Maybe
could be. Yeah. Well, and also I was thinking if you look at the literary content there, just what's written, it is very characteristic of how they would have talked about God or a Messiah figure or whatever. Right. Like look in Revelation, it talks about, his hair white like wool, and his legs were like pillars of fire, and his feet were like bronze, and so it does all this symbolic language, this literary device describing him. Right. So they could have just been trying to highlight Noah, but maybe there was some basis in reality there.
Definitely
interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't have anything else to say about Noah until after the flood.
that was the first speed bump. So Noah was an albino. So I'm gonna get some
first point.
I should get some bumper stickers made. Like Noah was an albino.
What's funny is there's an organization called the National. I don't remember I might be wrong, but I think it's like the National Office for. No, wait, it's something for helping people with albinism. It's a community. It's something whatever. But the acronym is NOAH.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, but it's totally coincidence. The guy that made it is like, this is not a Christian organization.
That is so funny.
But it's the National Organization of Albinism and something. I don't remember, but it's NOAH. And I think Germany has one too.
Well, another thing, Ryan, that I thought when I started thinking about Noah and being an albino, and it's like, they're human. Like there's nothing wrong with them. They just don't have any pigment. So it's like their hair is white. Their eyelashes are white. Their eyes tend to be maybe red. Their skin is very pale. They have red spots, in certain areas so they just look so strange, not strange, but just so alarmingly different,
Right.
And then it makes me think maybe that was what the two angels looked like when they went and came to Lot.
Yeah.
Because it says that Lot saw them and he knew right away that they were angels.
Yeah, and everybody else did too.
And everybody in the town, in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Maybe not. I don't know. That's a different topic. There was something that distinguished them from everybody else, though. They might not have known they were angels, but they
were
knew.
Human. Yeah. And they saw that, those are dudes, but they were drawn to them in some way and fashion. And so that leads a lot of scholars to believe that, maybe it was something about their appearance.
Well, and you mentioned Alberino a second ago, but I know he has said that he talks about like the type of aliens, the Nordic.
Yeah, the Nordic aliens, yeah.
Not Nords from Elder Scrolls, but like they're basically Vikings. That's different.
Right. Well, there's
angels that are tall, Caucasian with blonde hair, blue
aliens,
eyes. they're aliens or
well,
extraterrestrials.
There's accounts of people that have been abducted, and they talk about this alien race they call themselves the Nords, or we label them as the Nords, and they're tall, pale skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yep.
Kind of the
so imagine those guys walking into a town where it's a bunch of dark skinned people, dark beards, dark hair. Yes, like in the Middle East, like that would be alarming.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. When I went to China for a missions trip, China is awesome. The people there are beautiful. They're very short though. So everybody's very short. Everybody has black hair. So when you're like in a mall, we went to the mall and there's like thousands of people everywhere, but it's hard to distinguish because everybody's like kind of small and everybody has stark black hair. And so when we show up, it's like me and a couple of guys with our church and a couple of ladies. And one of the guys in our group, he was about 6'2", and he has blonde hair and blue eyes. And they thought he was the most greatest thing they've ever seen.
Like a movie star or
something. It was.
Huh?
They didn't know. They had never seen. We were asking our guide. Our guide was from the area, and he was talking to the people, and we were asking him like, "What are they saying? What are they?" He's like, they've never seen white people before, and they've never seen people so big with blonde hair, and it's alarming crazy to them. Dude, people were handing their babies to him. His name was Luke. And so we'd see Luke like holding the baby, and they're like taking pictures of him. I mean, it was like he was a celebrity. So
that's crazy.
It might have been something like that.
Yep, could have been.
Pretty interesting.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, well then the next part, it gets into like I said, the construction of the boat, the animals, all that stuff we're going to save for later. We're going to put a rain check, if you will.
So where are we jumping to now? Let's see.
That was a flood joke. That's okay. I got a lot of them today.
Yeah. We're going to drown in it.
We're going to drown in it.
Where are we jumping to 7?
I do have one thing about chapter 7. So chapter 7 is still flood. But I was going to say that, since we talked about Mount Hermon and that kind of stuff, a lot of people they try to talk about how deep the waters were, and they look at chapter 7 verse, I have 18 through 20 written down, where it says that, and I'm reading ESV. Yeah, it says that it prevailed greatly on the earth. It says that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. And it says water prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. So just the fact that it notes that, a lot of people, I think, take that at face value just to say like, oh, the water was so deep, it covered the mountains. God thoroughly flooded the earth, right?
Yeah.
But we just talked about how important mountains were, and that's going to come up again in the future. And so we should be keeping that in mind whenever you talk about mountains in the Bible, right? I think that there could be, I'll say it this way. That might not be here like I think it is, but I don't think it's far-fetched to say that this could be proving that God in the flood also thoroughly defeated his enemies, right?
Yeah.
Because it says he covered all the high mountains. Like mountains are high,
Yeah. Why would you say high mountains?
High mountains under the whole heaven.
It's just a mountain.
Yep.
Not the short one.
Anyway, he covered all the mountains.
Interesting.
And the flood, it says, prevailed on the earth for 150 days. And so, it rains for 40 days, and then there's water for 150 days. And then it takes, the water starts going away, and it takes a little while. So that's all significant too. But again, there's no time.
Yeah, there's a lot of significance with those numbers and how long did it rain?
Yep.
And it didn't just rain. The fountains of the deep were opened up. There could have been other things that could have happened that melted
geysers
certain things and
I don't know,
flooded certain areas. So there's, again, I'm just going to start calling him Dr. Alberino because he's basically on that level. But he talks about like there could have been a meteorite that came and hit the Arctic ice caps and melted those instantly. He talks about, the different scientific temperatures of meteorites. If it was big enough, it could have hit the ice caps and instantly liquefied that, and all that water had to rush somewhere. And so all of this stuff going on which, we think, oh, it just rained a lot. But
right.
I think it was more destructive. I think it was more of a cataclysmic. It reset the earth.
Yeah.
It's like it reset a lot of stuff. That's why I don't really believe in the local flood thing, but I think it totally reset the earth. And scientists are starting to pick up on this now. The Younger Dryas is something that people are studying. You can go study it yourself, but scientists are starting to look around. They're seeing evidence of like, man, it seems like right around this time period, when very closely to where we think, all this stuff was going down, and there was a huge comet, and it probably liquefied all the ice, and it seems like there was a huge flood all over the world, and all these people wrote about it, and it's just coincidentally.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. We talked about that in our dinosaurs episode too.
Right.
That people use that, like the idea of water levels and elevation.
Yeah.
I'll say young Earth creationists, they try to explain how dinosaurs are found where they are by saying, like, as the water rose, which creatures survived the longest, basically, and which ones got buried in certain layers. So that is something I would love to know more about, but I don't have time to go become a geologist or whatever,
I got
archaeologist. We'll have to get somebody on the show that knows that stuff. I thought that was a very interesting point of view.
Yeah.
So Genesis 8 is where the flood starts to go away. And at the end of Genesis 8 is where we kind of need to start paying attention again for today. You should always pay attention when you're reading the Bible.
Sure.
Today we're skipping some of it. So it says that this is when the floods have gone away, and Genesis 8:20 is where Noah offers offerings to the Lord. And he said, never again will I curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. So God basically acknowledges, like, men are wicked, and I'm not gonna do this again because of man's wickedness, right?
Right.
And I'm not gonna strike down every living creature as I've done. And it says, while the earth remains,
that's another thing that leads me to believe it was global. Because we see floods all the time, regionally. Yeah. Really big ones and bad ones.
Well, the biggest thing, I've been trying not to mention it, but the biggest thing that they would say semantically is the use of, like it's saying the whole world. Well, the whole world would have been just that area. They would not have known about North America, or whatever region is equivalent to modern day.
They were all together in one place.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have been all the way out to that extent, where North America would be. So anyway, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of interesting points on both sides.
I told you I would be the guy hanging out the window telling you about the speed bumps coming.
Yep, I'm trying to skip the flood, Josh. I'm trying to get past it.
All right, I'm not going to say anything.
All right. It's like, you're hanging out the window. I need a rest stop. And I said, no, we're not taking any stops. I need a Snickers.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. No rest stops.
All right. That's wrong.
But a lot of people use this passage at the end of chapter 8 and at the beginning of chapter 9 to discuss the idea of a pre-Adamic creation too.
Oh yeah.
And again, that's a topic for another day. I just want to throw that in there because they take it very literally. People in this camp, they take it very literally when it says, I'll never again destroy the world by a flood. I'll never again wipe out every living thing. And they say, well, when has he done it before?
Right.
Is he just talking about Noah's flood, or is he talking about something before that? So the idea is that before Genesis 1 verse 2, where he starts creating on earth, there was something else here already that he wiped out.
Gap theory.
Yeah. Gap theory. Yep. Okay, moving on from that, because who's got time for gap theory today?
We'll have to have a guest on that can explain gap theory to us a little
I'd love to. I love having guests, dude. It saves me so much time.
They're really smart, and we can just listen.
Yeah, you did the work already. You just tell us the answer.
Yeah.
So the trick is going to be finding guests that have maybe multiple points of view so that we're not just hearing the same thing over and over, right? That'll be interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we get one guest that's pro, we can find one that's con and weigh both sides.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Because I'll tell you right now, dude, like that's what people need. They need to hear both sides of an argument. I didn't do that for so long, and I was stuck in my ways, and I would never change. But man, when I really opened up and I started listening, okay, let me listen to some of these things that I say I don't believe in. And I was changed. I was like, wait, that makes sense. Like, I do believe that.
Yeah.
So it's good.
The whole, like I said, regional flood, global flood, young Earth, old Earth, like all that stuff, that you got to hear both sides, man. It's a fascinating topic.
It is. It's fun.
So in Genesis 9, we do need to talk about how God repeats the commission that he gave Adam now that Noah is the first man in this new
the second first
reset man. Earth, right? 2.0. So it says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. There you go. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He says, the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Skipping down a little bit, it says, okay, here we go. Every moving thing that lives for you shall be food. Now, this is different from what he told Adam, right?
Yeah.
Remember we talked about, was everybody in the garden a vegetarian?
Yeah.
So he says, everything that lives shall be food for you, and everything. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything.
Yep. This is where steak comes into the picture of the biblical narrative.
Oh, yeah. They're like, some dinosaur steaks. No, I don't know. Mammoth steak.
Hallelujah.
But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is the blood.
Yes.
And it says, for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning. From every beast, I will require it. And from man, from his fellow man, I will require reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, and by man, his blood shall be shed, for God made man in his own image. Yep. And then he repeats, and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. So it's like he's given the same thing he told Adam, but he makes a few amendments, and they have to be because of what Noah would have witnessed pre-flood, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a reason God is making these amendments to what he gave Adam.
Yeah.
And like the blood thing, where did that come from?
Right. Yeah, that's one thing that I saw that I was like, I wonder if that, these prohibitions in verse 4-6 were brought on because of what happened. It seems that way. What happened in Genesis 6, that of course, again, you have to go to like resources like Enoch to kind of get a more detailed look at the story. But it seems like the sons of God had these Nephilim, and the Nephilim were ruling over mankind in really tyrannical ways. And that it says that they started to devour everything.
Right.
They couldn't keep up. They were insatiable. They devoured all the resources, and then they started to eat flesh. And it almost has this like connotation of like, they were almost like cannibalistic.
Yes.
And just like eating everything. And that makes me think that they were probably very large. Like dinosaur large, maybe, who knows? But here God is like, look, don't do that. You've seen this happening, and you see the destruction that it's caused. Don't do like what they were doing.
Think about if there was all this occult, like we talked about divination, right? That was going on. Think about the ritual significance of blood, right?
Right. And so there's even like conspiracy theories of like elites today that consume cannibalistically and drink blood. And, of course that goes into witchcraft and stuff, but there's connections there that God is like, look, don't do any of that.
So he's saying don't eat something with the blood in it because, and it's probably connected to a meaning that it had before the flood,
Right.
So whether that's a ritual purpose, they were consuming the life of another creature or another human.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that he goes into like, hey, if you take the life of a human, humans are going to take your life for justice. So it's almost in the context of human blood. So
I think that's interesting too.
You could see that parallel there, that it could be cannibalistic things that he's speaking of.
Well, I think too, think about, because this reminds me of what he said to Cain, right? We had the story about Cain that, if anybody harms Cain, that he'll be avenged sevenfold.
Right.
And then Cain's descendant Lamech said, if Cain's vengeance was sevenfold, mine is 77. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of this thing of like, violence and kind of avenging yourself, taking revenge on people.
Right.
And God is basically saying that, we believe men were the stewards of the earth, right?
Yep.
Well, he's saying that you're going to be accountable to man. That's kind of how I read it. He's like, if someone sheds the blood of a man, he's going to be judged by men because this is man's domain.
Yeah.
So it's not saying like, I'm not going to, think about too, he just wiped out the whole earth because of their wickedness.
Right.
So now he's saying, if men kill men, I'm not going to be the one killing them now. Yeah. You're going to be the one taking them out because this is your job.
You take care of it. It's kind of like, like we bought a cat for the kids. And so, at first I have to take care of the cat because the kids don't know how, and it's not fun when you're messing with litter and all that fun stuff. But it's like, all right, I've gotten to a point where I'm going to wipe it out or you're going to take care of it. It's like, it's now your time.
This is your job.
Up. Yes. It's kind of like that. It almost has that feel to it.
But it puts all the responsibility on us too, because we said earlier, like, why is the world in the condition that it's in? Well, it has become what we allow it to become.
Right.
And when injustice is allowed to just run rampant, and we're not taking justice the way that the Lord instructed here. Anyway, that gets into the J word. Justice is kind of a trigger word nowadays. I didn't mean to say that. Everybody, sorry.
True. But you see spiritual, godly justice.
Yeah, we're talking about righteous judgment, right? That he's telling Noah, if a man kills another man, it's man's job to take care of that.
Yeah.
By man, his blood shall be shed. Not me, not a Nephilim, not a son of God.
Yeah, really.
You guys. Y'all got to take care of this. Keep your house clean.
Right.
So anyway, I think it's worded intentionally that way.
Yeah.
So later in chapter 9, oh dude, hold on now. This is my speed bump for today. Okay.
Let's do it.
I've never been so excited to talk about rainbows. So
I guess I'll talk about the unicorns.
Yeah. It's about to get glittery and crazy, everybody.
It's about to get colorful and glittery.
So I found this interesting. I did a little research on this because I heard someone on a podcast say it before, that we always assume. So I'm reading in the ESV. Okay.
Cool.
And it says, this is the sign of the covenant that this is in verse 9:12. I make between you and me and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring the clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between you and me and every living creature and all flesh, and the water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember everlasting covenant between God and every living thing. So everybody immediately goes, boom, rainbows, right?
Right.
Because when, you know how it works, when there's moisture in the air, the light from the sun refracts and it turns, Roy G. Biv, right? We learned that in science class, red, orange, yellow. Yeah. Anyway, so the word there for bow is katesh, I believe. Let me double check myself. But it's the word for the weapon bow. Okay.
Yeah. Bow and arrow.
There's not another word for rainbow that's used in the Bible.
Cool.
Okay. The only other time rainbows are mentioned in the Bible, there's one in Ezekiel, and it's kind of like we were saying about Noah. He's talking about the appearance of the Lord, that his face was surrounded with a rainbow. It's the same word. I said it wrong. It's cassette.
Okay. Like a cassette tape.
Yeah, I think so. But it shows up in Ezekiel, and then it shows up in Revelation. So that's in Greek because that's New Testament. and it's the word iris, which is only used in Revelation for rainbow. But again, it's talking about light and color. It's the appearance. So like we have reason to believe that in those instances, we're talking about rainbows. In this instance, rainbow makes sense too, because he's saying when the clouds cover the earth, the water won't become a flood. And we associate rainbows with, moisture, with rain, with water. Yeah. So like it makes sense. It makes sense like literally or semantically, because the shape of a rainbow is an arc, right? Just like a bow, like you hunt with a bow, it's an arc. So that round shape, that could just be the word they wanted to use for rainbow.
Sure.
Okay. But we should not limit ourselves to just thinking it means a rainbow. Okay. It can be both, right? That's what we say every day on this podcast. It could be
four things.
It could be all of the things.
Yeah.
There is context for this to mean an actual weapon. Okay.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is, I have laid down my bow and I will not pick it up again to take judgment on the earth. And when the clouds cover the earth and I see the bow laying in the clouds, I won't pick it up. Okay. I'll remember my covenant.
Right.
Now, we mentioned when we talked about the creation myth, the creation story in Genesis, that the Babylonians have a story about Marduk fighting Tiamat. And he kills Tiamat with a bow. And when the battle is finished and he uses Tiamat's body to create creation, to create the world. And all the other gods are like, oh, Marduk, you're so awesome. Marduk, guess what he does? He takes his bow and sets it in the sky, and it becomes a constellation. It becomes stars. And it is a sign that the fight was over. He won. So we shouldn't limit ourselves to think that this is just an actual rainbow like that we learn about in science class.
Right.
It also means God finished the fight here.
Right.
Think about the story that we've told with the sons of God rebelling, the humans corrupting themselves and rebelling against God, the Nephilim. God, in Enoch, it talks about how the sons of God were thrown into Tartarus and they were forced to watch their sons destroy each other in war. Yeah. The Nephilim, destroyed humans and destroyed each other in combat. The humans corrupted themselves and cried out for mercy. And then he ended up judging the whole earth with a flood. So there's this really big story going on. And at the end of it, God puts his bow down and says, I win. I'm done.
Right.
Noah, you take the stage now,
Right.
That's essentially what's happening here. So,
to me paints a better picture of that whole cataclysmic thing I was talking about. Because we think rain and water and, they had to get to high ground and jump in a boat. And it's more than that. And when I think of a bow, I think of arrows. I think of him shooting maybe comets and meteorites down on the earth, opening up floodwaters, underground and causing, just total havoc, the tremendous heat and fires and devastation. It changed the climate of the whole earth. Like so much was going on. I mean, it was truly the end of the world.
Yeah. So that
picture of him laying his bow down was like, all right, I've wiped the slate clean. Now it's time for peace.
Yeah. And it makes sense historically too, because, we talked about the historical context that the Israelites would have been surrounded by Egyptians and Canaanites and Babylonians, all these other people groups. So they would have understand the language when God set his bow, when Yahweh set his bow in the sky. That was what the gods did when they won the fight. They hung their bow up because they were done. They finished. They won.
And it gives more credibility to the other myths, if you want to call them that, the other accounts of like
they're copying,
all accounting the same event and all accounting the same thing. Some of these guys think, these guys are good, and some of these guys think these guys are bad, but it's the same story.
Yeah, so I won't go so far as to say it wasn't a rainbow and we all have that wrong. Like I see, again, because it's an arch or an arc, I get how people make that connection. It's associated with rain.
With water,
It's an obvious connection, but it absolutely means God laid down his weapon. He was done fighting. He won the fight.
Right.
And then he said, I'm not going to destroy humanity again.
Yeah. And you got to think, he didn't just destroy humanity; he destroyed all living things. Which would have been the Nephilim, maybe their hybrid children, maybe some other
the sons of God, the Watchers,
and things that we talked about in a previous episode. He destroyed all that stuff.
Yep. So he said the fight's over. I won. He set his bow in the clouds, and he says, "When I see my bow laying in the clouds, I'll remember that I decided not to destroy all living things again." So anyway, I was like, I'm not going to lie, this is going to sound dramatic, but I was like on the verge of tears reading this, like studying this, because I was like, that is just such a powerful image. That God is victorious and that he did the job. He even, people think, they criticize this story saying, how could God kill everybody? Well, really, he was victorious and he saved humans. I mean, you don't think about it that way. He saved humanity by rescuing this one guy out of everything that was going on. You know? So anyway, the bow, next time y'all, that word is used 76 times in the Bible, and only in this chapter in Genesis and in Ezekiel 1, that's the only 4 times it means rainbow. Every other time it means the weapon. So I think here it's both. I really do.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that
uses a rainbow as a bow and shoots like stars and meteorites.
Shoots lightning bolts, maybe?
No, comets? That's Zeus.
Yeah. Well, hey.
Yeah, he shoots comets and meteorites.
All right, so
that's fun.
Well, we can move on. That was my big discovery.
How much time do we have left?
We got a few minutes.
All right, let's roll.
Yeah, we got a few minutes.
All right.
So Genesis 9 starts talking about the descendants of Noah. He had the 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, I'm not a scholar. There's a bunch of names coming up in chapter 9 and chapter 10, and I'm not going to try to say them all the right way. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm from South Louisiana. It's hard enough to talk normal as it is, so I'm just going to do what I can here. But so he had those 3 sons.
He had all them.
We do need to talk about this story where Noah gets drunk and passes out in the tent, though.
That's always a fun story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gather around, kids. Let's talk about how Noah literally invented, well, I don't know, maybe it was around before then, but he actually worked and created a whole vineyard just so he could celebrate the spoils of it, let's say.
Yep. Well, and it's funny because it makes me think, like, if you read it literally, everybody says, oh, well, you know, Ham, his father's Noah's son. So you guys, in case you're not familiar with the story, it just says that he drank the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. That's Noah. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on their shoulders and walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backwards and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah woke up and then he curses Canaan, he doesn't curse Ham. He curses Canaan, his son, Ham's son. And he says that he'll be a servant to his brothers. So there's a few things here we need to talk about. So first of all, is it a sin to see somebody naked?
Could be.
Because that's how, if you take it literally,
funny that as soon as he got drunk, the first thing he did was took all his clothes off.
Yeah. It's hot. I'm hot, man.
It's getting hot in here.
So, but it makes me chuckle because if you take it literally, like, I've got a kid, right? And if I'm using the bathroom and my kid busts in if the door's not closed, he knows how to open doors now. If the door's not locked and he walks in and sees me sitting on the toilet, is he cursed now because he saw me naked? Like, I don't think this is a passage we can take literally. Yes, right. Everybody with kids knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't think it's that extreme. I think it's more, and you can elaborate on it, but I think it's more of a respect thing. I think it's
right.
Because you see
there's the
brothers,
implication that he did something disrespectful.
Right. Well, his behavior is contrasted with the behaviors of the brothers, which they don't look at their father. They walk in backwards and they cover him. So it was something during that time that, hey, you don't want to see your dad's nakedness. Amen. And so they looked away. And, even in our time, I think that's a good trope to live by. But they cover their father. And
so it's this idea of honor, right? Like honor your father and mother.
Respect and honor for your father. That was a no-no, I guess. So
yeah. Okay. So that would be like don't take it literally. Is it a sin to see your dad naked, Noah naked? That probably wasn't the problem here. It was, there was probably something else between the lines here that Ham did, that he mocked his father. He insulted his father. He dishonored his father somehow.
Well, it says the first thing he did after he saw him, he came out of the tent and he was like,
and
look,
told his brothers, right?
Look at this idiot,
Yeah. You're the only 4 dudes on the planet, and you're gonna go mess with. He's had a rough couple of years. I mean, give Noah a break.
Like, let the
now
guy,
some people take this a step further though and say that Ham did something immoral. Okay.
Yeah.
And the two options there, if you're going to go that route, is that he sodomized Noah, or that he slept with Noah's wife, which would be his mom. Okay.
Right.
And a lot of people take that route because when it says he saw the nakedness of his father, that is usually in the Bible an innuendo for
intercourse,
sleeping with somebody.
Yeah.
So
the fact that it says his nakedness, it could mean his physical, but it could also mean his in the sense that it belongs to him.
Belonged to him, part of him.
His nakedness that belonged to Noah was his wife. Right. His wife's nakedness. So that does make sense. But yeah.
So as evidence for this point, Leviticus 18, starting in verse 7, it says, "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. Exactly. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness."
Right.
And then it says, don't uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It's your father's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter.
Yeah.
And then it goes on and on and on. Don't uncover this nakedness, this naked.
So what's funny about these, like some of these like rules and laws, like I read on a website a long time, I don't know if it's still a thing, but there was a law like in New Orleans that you couldn't have an alligator tied up to a fire hydrant. I read that law and I was like, what the heck? And it's like, you read some of those laws, it's like, well, there's a law there because that's exactly what happened. And so when you're reading through the Bible and you read some of these laws and commands, you're like, man, this stuff really was going on. And he had
that's because somebody did that.
He had to summarize, okay, we need to get more specific with some of these rules now.
Yeah. This is the same verse in NIV in case anybody wants more evidence. It says, "Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have relations with her."
It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's kind of like
you can't. Like, it's one of those things where it's like the tone of it is like, I should not have to say this. Like,
exactly. Yeah. It almost has a goofy, like Monty Python feel to it.
It really does.
Have sexual relations with your mother.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome.
That's kind of funny.
So yeah. So, and then another evidence for that. Now this is getting kind of like nitpicky. Okay. But if you're like, oh, uncover nakedness, that means Noah's wife. Okay. Yeah. Well, if you notice, it says that in verse 18, Ham was the father of Canaan, in parentheses. It establishes that. But then whenever he says, "Cursed be Canaan," and it says, "A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." Yeah. Then it says, Canaan, it says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." And then it says, may God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. So he's saying that Canaan is going to be their servant. I guess he could be saying he's going to be God's servant. Like, that would be nice. But everybody reads this as he's saying Canaan is going to be the servant of Japheth and Shem. And he says that right after he says this servant of his brothers. Yeah. How are they his brothers if they're also his uncle? Well, if he
and
got
thus the
his
state
mom
of Alabama
pregnant.
Was born.
Yeah. Oh God!
Don't cut that out.
Rewind.
No, but what do you think about the curse coming on Canaan? How do you think Ham felt? Because sometimes I think, like, when persecution, or not persecution, but like punishment, when it comes on you, it's bad and you have to deal with it. But when your transgression causes punishment on someone else that's innocent.
Yeah.
Ring a bell. Like, how does that make you feel? It makes you feel horrendous, even worse. And to the point where, like, I bet Ham was probably like, wait, please, no, like, let it come on me. Just let it come on me. but he had to face the facts that it was going to be on his children.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that that's not Ham's only son. Like when we get to Genesis 10, so now we get into Genesis 10.
Yeah.
But it says that Ham.
Every time you say Ham, I'm like, ham
Solo.
Ham Solo.
But the sons of Ham or Ham. I don't know how you guys want to say it.
How do they say it in Europe?
It says
Ham,
Cush or Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. So he had 4 kids.
What are we going to name this one? I don't know.
Poot. I don't care. I mean, I guess it could be Poot, but I don't know if that's better. This guy.
Do you think they were just like, I mean, I know names have
come here, you little poot. Come here.
A lot of significance, in the Bible, but I see it as Josh's translation would be like, I don't know, Put. That's good. Move on.
Yeah. Yeah. He like coughed or sneezed or something. Okay, I'm gonna have to edit that out. That was very abrupt in my ears.
Sorry.
Let's see what I got a Blue Letter Bible pulled up here. What is Poot? It is pronounced Poot. Poot.
No way.
Yeah. Oh, it means a bow. That's funny.
No, it doesn't.
It does. That's what Blue Letter says.
It means break and win. That's what's funnier.
All right. Well. Anyway, that's so funny. Back. Let's see. Right,
back to Poot.
So, back to your regularly scheduled programming. So anyway, yeah, Genesis 10. Anyway, I think what I was saying was that's not his only son. So there was something about Canaan, right? So maybe he was conceived illegitimately, which would also make sense in context because part of the major cause for all the wickedness was sexual immorality pre-flood,
Yeah.
So maybe Noah's like, dude, God literally just killed everybody for that crap. Like, don't do that.
Yeah. Please don't do that.
So, anyway.
And it seems, because he was in a state of where he was not aware. And so, Ham could have seized that opportunity, maybe, if you want to take that route. But I don't know.
Well, you also see that with like David and Absalom. Absalom slept with David's concubines, so his wives. I don't remember exactly.
A lot of sex in the Bible, huh?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. If they made a movie of the Bible, I don't think we would be allowed to watch it.
Nope. They're making a sequel to The Passion, though.
They are, and it sounds crazy cool.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So Genesis 10, because we got just a couple minutes left here. So let's speed through Genesis 10 and 11. We have almost reached our goal. We just have to make it to Genesis 11:8. And then
he said that so serious, like we've got to do this.
We're almost there, man. It says that these are the generations of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I know that that's not how you pronounce them correctly, but again, that's the South Louisiana way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Sons were born to them after the flood. Okay. And then it goes into each one. Now, Genesis 10 is very, very important. It's a genealogy, so I think a lot of people are like, yawn, right?
Right.
Genesis 10 is known as the Table of Nations, okay? There's actually 70 families named here. And I'm not going to read them all right now. It would take a minute. But there's actually 70 of them, okay? 70 is a very important number in the Bible.
Yeah, it is.
It establishes things, okay? This is symbolic, and all these families spread out over each direction, north, south, east, west. And you may even recognize some of the names like Egypt, right? I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
Sounds
Canaan. So it's showing that humans spread out and started multiplying on the earth again. Yeah. Okay,
and which was what God commanded Noah. Because it tells you about hey, this is how this country was formed, and this country came from this people, and
right.
Even it's like where the Canaan, I think it was, is like this is where the Philistines came from. It's like
well,
that's where Goliath came from. Maybe
since you mentioned that, let's look at Where does it have Canaan in here?
Do you want me to go over my little speed bump footnote real quick?
Verse 15. Well, let's see real quick. Canaan's descendants, it says, were the Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites,
all the
Sinites. All these guys, afterwards, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed. And it says that they went from Sidon in the direction of Gerar. So this is them spreading out. Mm-hmm. Sodom and Gomorrah are listed here.
Yep.
Nineveh, Admah, Zeboim, and Lasha. So all these clans that come from Canaan and all these areas actually come up later in the conquest.
Oh, yeah.
So the curse on Canaan is significant, and I really think that might be part of the reason he's singled out in that curse is because the Israelites actually end up fighting these guys later.
Overthrow all of them, yeah.
Yep. So that's very important to remember.
Yes.
But yeah, Josh, you had something to throw in there.
Yeah, just real quick, because like you said, it's like genealogies. All right, I'm going to sleep. But genealogies are super important. And here's one little like thing that you could take away from it. It's describing people, it's naming people, it's giving people an identity. It's like, oh, when you're called by name, you're like, you're known. When somebody calls you by name, they're real people. It's real places. And so it's good to read that. And one important note, it talks about in the book of Luke, the beggar that was calling out to Jesus. So Jesus had this multitude of people around him, and the beggar's crying out, Jesus, son of David. And people are telling him, like, hey, shut up, bro. He's got better things to do right now. And he yells. It says that he got louder, which is funny. He's like, Jesus, son of David. And he cries out loud. And it says that Jesus immediately stopped and told them to bring the beggar to him. And he was eventually healed. But it's interesting that genealogy of him being the son of David was interesting, and that this guy knew that. And it's funny because I saw where it talks about there was a Jewish tradition in Judaism where the son of David, which we would think Solomon, but the son of David in this genealogical line of the King David of Israel, had powers of healing. And that this guy wants to be healed. And he's recognizing that tradition, and he's saying, Jesus, son of David, Jesus, the healer, almost, is what he was saying.
Wow.
And Josephus talks about that in Antiquities. But yeah, interesting little thing there. And it's this other little thing, where we read stuff so quickly, we're like, Jesus, son of David, why did he call him that? And that could be why. Maybe he was referencing a Jewish tradition that title was connected to healing.
That's good.
Come on, somebody.
I like that. I'm starting to wonder if we should just wait. Like we are right here on the heels of Genesis 11.
Yeah.
Should we just do the whole episode on the Tower of Babel and Nimrod?
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's stop here and do a whole episode.
Okay.
Because there's a lot to talk about there. So
let me just, as a segue to that, then let me just say, and this can be our conclusion for today, that the reason the 70 nations in the Table of Nations is important, or the 70 families is important, because this is going to shape really the rest of the writing in the Bible. And that's why we've been going through Genesis 1 through 11, because again, you ask, why is the world in the condition that it is? Or why is the Bible so important? Why is it written the way that it is? These first 11 chapters really set the stage, because once you hit the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, 1 through 8, the next verse starts Abraham's family line. Mm-hmm. And at the end of Genesis 11, you meet Abraham. And then in Genesis 13 and 14 is when the Lord starts speaking to Abraham, 12. That's when the Lord starts speaking to Abraham or Abram. And so the whole story pivots at that point.
Right.
And we start seeing Abraham, God's promise to Abraham. And then Isaac inherited that. Then Jacob inherited that. Then Israel, the nation of Israel, inherited that.
So you could really say
the church inherited that.
Right, exactly. Genesis 1 through 11 is like, that's the whole beginning story.
That's the frame, yeah.
Right.
And the proof. So Genesis 10, having these 70 nations, that number is important because what do you see? We'll talk about it in the next, not the next episode, but maybe the one after that. That Deuteronomy 32:8, God divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God.
Of the sons of God.
Yahweh divided up the nations. And he's talking about the event at the Tower of Babel. And so you have these 70 nations. And then when Moses meets with the Lord in the tent, the Lord says, bring 70 elders.
Yeah.
And they represent God's new council, right? They are now God's representatives on the earth. And so that's in, it's Numbers. Okay, I got it. It's Numbers 11. It says, the Lord said to Moses, this is verse 16, bring me 70 men from Israel. And so anyway, he met with them in the tent. That's the reference, Numbers 11.
Gotcha.
And then in Luke, and this is going to take some analyzing later on, but Luke 10, Jesus sends out 70 apostles.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you read, a lot of translations say 72. There's reasons for why it gets translated that way, but the symbolism is there. Jesus is establishing the new council, the new messengers, right?
Right.
That these guys are going to go out and save the nations. Then in Acts chapter 2, on the day of Pentecost, really the whole book of Acts, but especially Acts chapter 2, when so remember at the Tower of Babel, the nations are divided up. And they all start speaking different languages. Well, what happens at Pentecost?
Right.
Everybody starts understanding what the people, the disciples in the upper room are saying. And it says in chapter 2, they were amazed. It says, how is it? These are Galileans, and we all hear our own native language: Parthians, Medes, Elamites, Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt. So Luke, and it names several others.
Yeah.
And then every time somebody hears the gospel, it says where they were from, or if they get filled with the Holy Spirit and start speaking in other languages. It's, Luke, who's writing the book of Acts, records where they're from. And then you have, like in the epistles, Paul trying to get to Spain. He says, I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm on my way to Rome. I'm trying to get to Spain. Well, why was Paul targeting certain areas? It's because they had this vision in their heads that because of Jesus's death and burial and resurrection, that it's time to reclaim the nations.
Yeah.
And that's all based on what we see here in Genesis 10 and 11.
Right. Reclaim the nations from what?
Yes, exactly.
The gods that were set over them, right?
Yep.
Back in Deuteronomy 32.
So when he said, at the end of Matthew, and he gives the Great Commission, he says, I've been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Who's he have authority over? Why heaven and earth?
Right.
And then he says, go and win souls and make disciples. And he's actually mimicking what God told Adam and Noah. Go forth, fill the earth, multiply, subdue it, right? Well, he says, go into all the world, win souls, and make disciples. And
the plan hasn't changed.
Right. It's the same plan. God is trying to reconcile. He's trying to save the earth, right? He's trying to reconcile humans and bring them back into the kingdom of God and bring them back into the family of God. And so, anyway, again, if you're not paying attention or if you don't study some of the history and the reason it's written the way that it is, you don't get that in your head,
right?
Especially in the book of Acts. So like, there's a reason Luke goes through and names all these places. There's a reason Paul names all the places he goes to. It's because they are thinking like, Jesus, as soon as we get all these nations, Jesus can come back. Like, right. That's what they're thinking,
Dude. And that makes me think about Paul at the Areopagus, because he's going there and basically their message was, like, hey, you don't have to worship these other gods that have been placed over you, that have been treating you badly and have been treating you with injustice and, not being close to you and being, because you read about the gods, in mythologies, and they're not very godlike. They're very childish, and they war with each other, and they're not very good to their worshipers. And so Paul going in there and being like, hey, he even quotes, what was it? A Psalm of Zeus, I believe.
Right. In him we live and move.
Yeah. And he's
Is that the one?
Yeah. And have our being. And he's quoting this. I think he's saying, hey, look, the unknown God, the statue that you have over here that you don't know what his name is, I'm going to tell you what his name is. And he's the chief God.
Yep. He does
come
it in,
back to him now.
I have here Acts 14 when Paul and Barnabas go to Lystra, and it says the priests of Zeus tried to sacrifice to them, right? Because they healed somebody and everybody thought, oh, these are gods. Yeah. And there's actually a fun story behind that. That's based on their own mythology too, that Zeus would dress up as like a regular human and go around and
he would, you know.
So they thought Paul and Barnabas were these gods, and he said, don't you know that we're humans just like you? We're bringing you the good news. So turn from these worthless things to the living God. And he says, in the past, this is Acts 14:16. In the past, he let all nations go their own way.
Right.
Yet he's not left himself without testimony, and he's shown kindness to you by giving you rain and crops. And he's saying that he's the Lord that created the world too, which is, so all these things he's saying that, you know, all these things that you attribute to your gods, Yahweh is the one that does all these things. He's the creator. He's the one that gives you rain. He let you go your own way for a while, but now he's saying, come back. So, so anyway, that
it's safe to come back, I think, because that was a judgment on the nations to have these.
I have that here too, because Plato even wrote about that they believed in the idea of territorial gods.
Right.
I think we've done this before. I think we've read this before, but just this little excerpt here from Critias. I'm not sure how you say it, but he just says, in the days of old, the gods had the whole earth distributed among them by allotment. There was no quarreling because he basically says, you know how gods know how they're supposed to behave, so they each tended to their own area. Yeah. And then he talks about how things changed and they started fighting each other. Well, so like this was in the Greek minds too. The world was divided up into territories. And so, yeah, you're right. When Paul goes in and starts preaching the gospel, he's saying like the Lord allowed that for a while, but now he's saying, leave them, come back. It's okay. This is the way of life, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
so
man.
Awesome.
So Genesis 10 and 11. So we'll get back into that. Not in the next episode, because we actually have another guest coming on.
Yay!
And he's going to talk a lot about.
Ryan? Should we tell them all or just keep it a secret?
Yeah, I'll just say we have mentioned him on the podcast before.
Yes,
and
he is somebody that we look up to very much.
He's very knowledgeable about this whole topic, the gods of the nations, the Tower of Babel, all that stuff.
It makes my brain hurt when I listen to him, but in a good way.
Yeah. So come back next time. And in the meantime, though, Josh has gotten us a Twitter and a YouTube, and we're on Instagram. So go follow us. We're at behindthecurtainpc on Instagram. Twitter is we had to change the name to get a Twitter handle. It's BTC Mysteries, I think. Yeah.
Instagram is kind of like our hub, and I kind of do stuff here and there, and Twitter and YouTube. So,
yeah. And then Behind the Curtain, Mysteries of the Past and Present, wherever on all the major podcast streaming platforms, and on YouTube, Behind the Curtain, Mysteries of the Past and Present. Send us your questions on, Twitter or Instagram or email. Questions. We have a Gmail account, so you can email us at behindthecurtainpc@gmail.com. And you might have questions about what we're talking about, and maybe maybe you have recommendations for guests that you want to hear from. Yeah, we're reaching out to a lot of people, and it's just a matter of like whoever responds. Most people respond and say yes, but like not everybody responds. So we're just trying to send as many invites as we can. But so yeah, if y'all have any interest in hearing a particular guest on the show, let us know, or a particular topic. Yeah, and that's where we're going to leave this one.
Thank you guys for listening. Those of who are listening, thanks for listening. It's crazy that Ryan and I can have the conversations that we normally have, but then people want to listen in on that. It's really cool. And
and it's good. It's good for us. It challenges us to study and learn more, and it helps us because we have friends that have the same questions. So it's great. It's great.
Very good.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, tune in next, when the next episode comes out for our special guest, our next guest, number 3.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, we'll pick back up with Genesis 10 and 11.
Hallelujah. See ya.
See ya.